Portland's premier pop culture event is back at the Oregon Convention Center. Rose City Comic Con is happening once again from September 11th through the 13th. And this year, they're getting Alan Tudyk, Patton Oswalt, Brian Michael Bendis, and so many more celebrities and comic creators to come hang out with us here in Portland. Plus, of course, all of the other amazing programming they do every year. Buy your passes today at rosecitycomiccon.com. That's rosecitycomiccon.com. Good morning. Today on CityCast Portland, we're talking about why the state is leading an ethics investigation into the travel spending of Home Forward's previous leader, plus the team behind the Safer Portland initiative to hire more cops using PCEF money have hired a lawyer that's represented the Trump administration in court. And we're also covering what is known so far about local public school closures and consolidations heading into the new year. I'm your host, Claudia Meza, and with me are Willamette Week City Hall reporter Sophie Peel and Oregonian education reporter Julia Silverman. Welcome, friends. How's it going?
Hi, Claudia.
Not too bad. Thanks for having us.
Of course. You both have very long job titles, and I suggest that you shorten them.
Do we?
Yeah.
We'll give it thought.
Just give us some thoughts. I don't know.
What would you prefer?
CH reporter?
No explanation needed.
No, just everyone's gonna be like, what's this ch?
Julie's the E reporter.
E reporter, CH reporter, intro so much faster. Okay. Today's opening question is actually based on something Ch reporter Sophie published when she continued staying on Home Forward's neck. Last week, the Oregon Government Ethics Commission voted unanimously to investigate the former CEO of Home Forward, Ivory Matthews. Just to catch you up, if you're like, who? Matthews resigned in May as the CEO of Home Forward. I don't think they have a CEO anymore. After somebody reported on her extensive and lavish travel on the public dime while her agency, which provides affordable housing as well as housing vouchers, struggled immensely. Now they're focusing on her travel spending between 2023 and 2025. And all of this was decided after a staff investigator of our state's ethics commission completed an initial investigation following complaints. And it seems enough was found to recommend they move forward with a full-on investigation. And Sophie, you were just like, more stuff came up, like stuff that I didn't even know when you were looking into it. Are you able to just quickly summarize what this initial report found?
Sure, yeah. I had just forgotten that once the Ethics Commission actually votes to investigate, a full investigation, you can get the preliminary report. Someone was like, you can get that. And I was like, oh, shoot. So, yeah, it's like a 19-page report. And, a lot of what was in there we already knew. I think the investigator, I wish I knew how to pronounce his first name, and I don't. It's Silas Patterson. But it sounds like from his telling that in the report that he pretty much got the same documents that Willamette Week got. But it seemed like maybe there were a couple extra because there were little tidbits in there that I was like, I didn't know that. I think the best detail that I hadn't known before is that Ivory Matthews spent 3 nights at the Portland Marriott downtown during a Home Forward conference that they were hosting in the summer of, I think it was 2024. And obviously, this doesn't need explanation, but Home Forward is a Portland agency. Their headquarters are also downtown. She lives in Tigard, which without traffic, it's like a 15-minute drive for her to get to the Home Forward headquarters from her home. And yet she charged 3 nights at the Portland Marriott to Home Forward, which I don't know how that is defensible.
It's not. It really, that's the thing that there's a few more, but that in itself, I was like, girl.
Yeah. And then I think the other really interesting thing that this report brought up, and which we couldn't ever quite really pin down with our reporting, is that, basically Home Forward has asserted in various ways that all of the board has asserted that all of her travel was pre-authorized. Mm-hmm. And when the investigator Patterson went in and asked Home Forward for hey, can you give me all the authorization forms for her travel? Home Forward's general counsel came back and said, oh, we don't have any. And the investigator was like, why? And the general counsel was like, well, the travel policy that you're referencing that's in our, handbook only applies to people that aren't the CEO, so Ivory Matthews, and aren't the 3 chiefs that are under her. So basically it applies to everyone but the one person who probably needed that policy more than anyone. So Yeah, so and that's part, the Ethics Commission said that will be part of the full investigation now of whether Home Forward's travel policy should have, does apply to the CEO. And also, if it doesn't apply to the CEO, what the heck, there needs to be some guardrails around that. And I think it was really the board's responsibility to, know what she was doing and put some guardrails around her spending. And they obviously didn't. So yeah, it was a really, there were a couple other themes that he sort of teased out that I thought were really interesting. Like and we'd sort of seen this in our reporting, but we the receipts were really complicated. So we didn't feel comfortable saying this, but she tied her personal rewards accounts for Hilton, Marriott's, whenever she went to these various conferences across the country, she tied her Home Forward travel to her personal rewards accounts, which I don't think you're supposed to do, separation of church and state. And then potential family involvement, right? Home Forward did pay for hotel rooms where Ivory had a second person, a family member. And we know that she took a number of her travels that were sort of vacation-esque. She had family members with her. It's not totally clear if they were staying with her, but I think the preliminary report was let's dig into that. So we'll see. It'll be really interesting.
Yeah, I want to point out for people listening, because I know we've had comments of man, you guys really don't like this woman. And it's this is not what the reporting is about. The reporting is about public funding being misused. If this were about a freaking kicky woman getting Amazon or literally Google to pay for her vacations and stuff, more power to them. But this is public funding that's supposed to go to the most vulnerable people in our society, a system that's already failing. So know that. But also, for me, when I saw this initial report, the fact that nobody knew, the fact that she was allowed to do this for so long, as you stated, Sophie, that in itself, that is an ethics commission report as well. What is going on with that board that they're just cool, have fun?
Yeah. And one board member has really, they all kind of went to bat for her, but one board member especially has gone to bat for her even in this preliminary review, which it's really interesting to read that whole letter.
Well, my opening question to you two is, if somebody else was picking up the dime, not public funds, so you don't feel guilty, but somebody else, somebody rich, was picking up the dime, where would you vacation in Portland?
How realistic does it have to be?
Not? As unrealistic as you want. Okay, whatever. Cool. Yeah.
Well, I have always been, and I think actually the Oregonian did some good reporting on the condos at the top of the Ritz that just haven't been sold because no one wants to pay $9 million or whatever it was. They slash it in half to maybe $5 million. But I hope I don't get in trouble for this. I assume that they're the weirdest, most sterile, bachelor pad things you've ever seen. And I would like to spend a few nights there and just see what it feels like, to be in the 1%.
To be an American Psycho?
Right, yeah. And to get my food delivered to me in bed and just really grub out.
Well, what about you, Julia?
Okay, my answer is I like an Airbnb, not a hotel, so that there's a little room to spread out. So there is a house available right on the lake in Lake Oswego. It appears to cost something $1,500 a night. It says it has an in-home cinema, yoga studio, gym space, office space, various other amenities, bathtub with lake view, beach lounge chairs, boutique garden. I am in. Sign me up. I'll pay homage to my beloved late colleague Zane Sparling and wade into the lake fully dressed. Sounds great.
How'd you find that Airbnb?
I know.
I'm very good at finding Airbnbs. I just am. What can I say?
I love it. Julie's let me tell you, it is a good thing the Oregonian has guardrails because
I would be the subject of an ethics complaint for sure.
Yeah. Well, you guys, thank you so much. Let's take a quick break here. And when we come back, Sophie is going to tell us about why a former U.S. Justice Department attorney will be helping sue local elections officials. The Montevilla Jazz Festival is happening this Labor Day weekend, September 4th through the 6th. And this year, there's 25 featured concerts throughout the Montevilla neighborhood and Mount Tabor Park. That's 3 days of top-notch, all-original jazz programming, world premieres, and a walkable neighborhood full of music, food, and discovery, including a special opening night at Alberta Rose Theatre, celebrating large ensemble composition, cross-disciplinary collaboration, and the creative voices of Portland artists, featuring North Pole Studios Rhythm and Hues, which pairs local musicians with autistic and developmentally disabled visual artists, and the debut of Rebecca Sanborn's Shadow Work. Get your pass today at montevillajazz.org. That's montevillajazz.org. I'd like to introduce you to Stacked Piercing, a new luxury piercing studio in Portland's Alberta Arts District. It's local and woman-owned, welcoming everybody exactly as they are. Stacked is calm and spa-like, so no chaotic vibes, no piercing guns, just expert care in a space built to put you completely at ease. A relaxed atmosphere for ages 8 and up. Custom curated ear and nose looks are their specialty, which are guided every step of the way, and the Stack method follows your natural anatomy for placement that lasts and supports your healing long after you leave. They have beautiful, high-quality jewelry for modern mood, Buddha jewelry, and Tawapa, with hundreds of designs meeting the standards of the Association of Professional Piercers, which I've heard in this world is a big deal, so you're walking out day one in your dream piece. And CityCast listeners can take 20% off their first booking at stackedpiercing.com. Just use the code CityCast20. It's for services only. Jewelry is not included. That's stackedpiercing.com. Welcome back. Just so you guys know, we're still talking about this Airbnb. Julie just sent it to us via the chat, and now Sophie is looking at it.
Yep. Well,
Are you changing your answer, Sophie?
Well, I'd like to maybe stay here too. So maybe we could just bundle our staycations.
Maybe we'll just put it in our show notes so everyone can see this Airbnb. How about that? Okay, Sophie.
Yes.
Tell us about this latest development. I do want to say I called it. I feel like a lot of people were like, are they going to sue? And I was like, they're going to sue. Oh,
well, they said they were going to sue. Like,
but I think
I'm not sure if
people,
it was a secret.
I know, but I think a lot of people were like, but they have not, like, they're not going to.
Yeah.
It's a lot of money, you know?
It is
and
a
I'm
lot
just
of
like,
money.
It's a lot of money. So catch us up for those who are just like, Safer Portland.
Yeah, so Safer Portland is the campaign behind a failed initiative to, get a ballot measure on the November 2026 ballot. And what that measure would have done is it would have rerouted 25% of the Portland Clean Energy Fund revenues, which is our city's somewhat controversial climate tax, reroute 25% of that revenue to hiring about 400 police officers. And it got really messy. They turned in, I think if I recall correctly, the campaign said they turned in 60,000 signatures to, the city and the county, and then the city and the county have to verify those signatures. And the city and county came back and basically said, okay, you didn't reach the threshold of, a little over 40,000 to actually make it on the ballot. Then the campaign comes back and basically says, you erroneously threw out hundreds of signature sheets. Like if you had counted all of those, you didn't look at a fair sample because you didn't get the full, picture of signature. So they decided to take this to federal court, curiously, and they filed their lawsuit on August 20th. And it is the chief petitioners of the failed ballot initiative that are suing, and then a couple other people that sort of tacked on their names. They have a number of lawyers representing them, and I think they actually still do have a couple local lawyers on the case. They have a number of lawyers representing them in this case. But the latest one that I could see when I was looking through this lawsuit was a man named, I think I'm pronouncing his name correctly, and I apologize if I'm not, Abhishek Kambli. He is based out of a DC law firm called Holtzman Vogel. That's a, pretty prominent, conservative law firm that actually currently has ties to President Trump. And, they've filed a number of, amicus briefs in support of the Trump administration trying to not litigate. I mean, they're in the defense, basically, for a number of Trump's executive orders. But Kambli in 2025 and 2026 was actually part of the DOJ. And he was the primary counsel for the Trump administration on a number of pretty high-profile cases. And so he defended the Trump administration's executive orders around, transgender people not being able to serve in the military. He defended the Trump administration when they were using, under the Alien Enemies Act of I don't remember the date. I think it was 1790 something, a really long freaking time ago. He invoked that in order to deport immigrants, primarily Venezuelan immigrants, that they
without due process. Yeah.
Right, without due process, and alleged that they had ties to the Tren de Aragua gang.
And made a bunch of them disappear.
Correct, yes. A bunch of them disappeared, yeah. And then his law firm that he's currently with, he's actually leading a group of lawyers who just filed twin amicus briefs supporting the Trump administration's trying to basically get a rehearing in a case in which they tried to get Michigan's unredacted voter rolls. So he has gone to bat for the Trump administration on some of his worst executive orders. And I find it, I was a little baffled, I think, when I saw that about why, I will say he seems like a good lawyer. Like not that Trump has really won any of his legal crusades necessarily. Like it's a lot of these are going through the appeals process and that stuff is so complicated. But like he was a high profile lawyer for the DOJ and he was everywhere in news clips and, he was getting in like little rows and tiffs with, judges and like he was around. And, I asked the Safer Portland campaign, can you tell me about why you hired this lawyer? And they pretty much said like it's immaterial who the lawyer is. It's just about the argument we're making. Which I think in some ways they have a point in terms of like court proceedings. No. It's probably not. They are just arguing the law. So great. But in the court of public opinion, I think it really matters a lot, especially for a campaign that has said why we're challenging county and city elections officials is because we don't think they're like upholding elections integrity. But then they hired this guy who spent a couple of years defending Trump in courts, and Trump is the steal the vote guy. Like he is undermining our democratic elections process. So I think there's a little bit of irony there. Maybe
the whole, I don't know how Julie feels about this, but the whole like, oh, this is immaterial. It's like the political version of like, I don't see color. You're just like, we're just going to deny this political circus that you are invoking because you are, and also the optics of it, because I feel like a lot of people who were against this initiative, they just sort of tied it to political, like conservatism in a sense. Like they were just like, this is weird. This feels like it's against my values. Red flag, quite literally done with this one. Right. And for them to be like, oh, and by the way, we just hired the Trump administration's like legal lackey. Like it just doesn't, it's not really fighting any kind of narrative. It's making things feel a little bit, I don't know. I mean, Julie, what do you think?
I mean, I think there's a lot of lawyers out there that could have taken this case, and I think they knew exactly who they were hiring.
Yeah, like 50% of me thinks that they were just like, since this whole process was pretty rushed, that maybe they were just like, elections lawyers, who can we get? Who's around? And then the other part of me is like, I think they knew what they were doing. And I don't know because they won't tell me. But yeah.
You can't play dumb. You can't play dumb with this stuff. And especially when it's, oh man.
I wouldn't say they're playing dumb. Well, I mean, I guess by saying it's immaterial who we hire as legal counsel. I also wonder, what is this guy's rate? Maybe there's a chance he's working pro bono. I really doubt it. But if he's not, he's got to be very expensive. And the campaign also won't tell me who's paying the legal bills. I have a guess, but they won't confirm.
I also think it's interesting that like the Trump administration is spending a lot of time these days trying to cast doubt on the integrity of the vote by mail system and the election system in general. And this is of a piece of with that, right? To say like, oh, elections officials erroneously threw out thousands of signatures casts doubt on a public process. I've personally always found the Multnomah County Elections Office, and I think they're the ones who would have had to verify the signatures, right?
It was actually mostly, I think the city is the one that they're madder about.
Okay, so my familiarity is with Multnomah County Elections, but I have found them to be incredibly straightforward and responsive in years of reporting about them.
Yeah.
So.
I think the one thing that like I'm obviously not like trying to say who's going to win this case. And I actually don't think the plaintiffs are going to win this case. I think it's a real long shot. But I will say like, There was some, but before they sued the Safer Portland campaign, they did like provide some signatures. They would like put side by side a signature that had been thrown out and then a signature that had been accepted from the same person, and they looked exactly the same. So there's something that I'm like, that feels a little funny. And, you know, I'm not saying, I don't think it was like politically motivated or, you know, they're trying to say like the city elections office basically politically motivated to throw out these signatures. But I will say, like, I think there's enough question there to where I think the campaign is kind of building off of that. Like, well, look at these signatures and look at these signatures, and they were the exact freaking same. And yet one got accepted, one got thrown out. So yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see how this all plays out.
I mean, we got to wrap, but to your point, Sophie, I think this is why Secretary of State Tobias Reed went in pretty hard on City Auditor Simone Reddy and just our city office just being like, if there is enough doubt to even bring this argument up, what are you guys doing? And I think that was his whole point. It wasn't like you guys did this. It's just like you guys are giving them something. And this should be so cut and clear and like non-refutable. So I totally hear what you're saying. And honestly, like if for some reason our city did screw all this up, like I hope that comes up too. But like ultimately now calling in this lawyer, this just feels, it feels like a circus. It's pretty hard to take people serious when they bring in the circus. You know what I mean? You're just like, oh, okay, guys. All right, here we go. That's my point of view. That's my POV. Sophie didn't say that. Julia didn't say that. But thank you. I guess I'm assuming you're going to keep an eye on this, and we're going to see how this develops. Did you just shrug? You're like, I don't know. I could be disinterested.
Sometimes I start stories and I just don't finish them. It's a real weakness of mine.
This is not a good trait to have in a show reporter.
No, it's really not.
Well, let's take a quick break here. And when we come back, we're going to hear about some potential school closures and all that's, going on behind that with Julia here. More than 20 years ago, Grand Central Bakery took tomatoes off their menu unless they were sourced from local farms at peak ripeness. That decision turned tomato season into a celebrated annual event, marking the return of the Grand Central BLT. And this year, they're sourcing their plump tomatoes that I'm being told are larger than a baseball from Deep Roots Farms and Gathering Together Farm in our Willamette Valley. They pair up these thick tomato slices with Jack Mountain Meats bacon, crisp lettuce, and rich tangy mayo on perfectly toasted Como bread. That's an Italian rustic white bread with a gold crust and a soft and chewy center, house-made of course. And if bacon's not your thing, just get it without the bacon. It's equally delicious. Or you can add some of these fresh local tomatoes to your favorite sandwich like a Beecher's cheddar egg biscuit, which sounds delicious. Find out why people rearrange their vacation plans for this BLT. Order online at grandcentralbakery.com or at any of their 8 neighborhood locations. And yeah, they do deliver. Julia, this is kind of a big deal for a lot of parents. I even have 2 questions that were submitted to me by a PPS parent that was like, can you please ask Julia this? And I was like, sure, of course.
Amazing.
So yeah, lay it out. Like, tell us what's going on. Why some people are very nervous already.
Right. So if you have kids at PPS, unless you've been living under a rock, you probably already know that the school district has been in pretty dire budget straits for years. But you also maybe know that enrollment has plunged an estimated 12% or so since prior to the pandemic, and it's just expected to keep going down, maybe as much as 15% more over the next 15 years. So, put those 2 things together, and what you wind up with is a conversation about, do we have too many school buildings for the amount of students that we're serving? And what does it mean for the children, the students, if we continue having this number of school buildings? How does it impact their education? What can we afford to offer and what can't we afford to offer? So the district has said that its plan this year is to propose scenarios that would close, consolidate, merge, change attendance boundaries, impact between closure of between 10 and 20 schools. Personally, I think that 20 is a little bit of expectation management. I think it's more likely that you'll see that number around the lower level, but who knows? I could be wrong. And this is something that could impact ultimately up to, half of all of the buildings within Portland Public Schools. Yeah. And of course, the students in them, their parents, their teachers, their principals, all the folks. So the school district has been pretty... we didn't hear much about this over the summer. And when it was time for back to school, I was like, okay, I had this grand plan that maybe we could build a model internally here at the Oregonian that would predict and give people some sort of more clarity, right, about like which schools actually might make that list. Turns out that's super difficult, especially if you don't know like block by block data about who lives where and where they send their kids to school and, what they're thinking about middle school or whatever. But we did do some internal analysis and come up with some potential scenarios that I think are fairly close to what you're going to see when the district puts out its own lists later, September, October, somewhere around there.
Yeah. I'm just curious, and apologies if you've already laid out the timeline, but future talk. They put out this list.
Right.
How long until...
So here's what we know.
Yeah.
We know that later in September, they're going to tell us here's more about the scope of what we're going to propose.
Okay.
Their lists will follow in October. And I think it will be, if you followed the debate over redrawing attendance boundaries around Jefferson High School last year, it'll be similar to that, right? Where they present scenario A, scenario B, scenario C, and they'll put those out to the community. There will be, after that, about 6 weeks of what I anticipate to be incredibly furious feedback, not particularly helped by those in the political realm who wish to fan the flames and immediately say, this is an outrage and everybody come for the district with pitchforks. I just don't know how helpful that is. Maybe listen first to their plans and hear about the impact that it could have on students, right? And school board members are set to take a vote on this in early to mid-December, I would say. No schools will actually close if that's the outcome, and that's not a guarantee. This process was started in San Francisco and Seattle and stopped in its tracks, and the superintendents were thrown out on their ear not long after. Well, I mean, the guy in Seattle resigned, but, read between the lines there. So the earliest any campuses would close is September of next year.
And they would be closed by then. It's not like they're going to wait for everyone to come in and then go, and we're closed.
Yeah.
Cool. Because that would make the most sense. So what I'm hearing is that you do have a loose prediction of which schools you think will likely be on that list. Are we able to talk about that?
Sure can. Look, I don't know anything for sure, but I can tell you that I think that there are a couple of different scenarios that will be under serious consideration. I think they'll look carefully at K-8 schools just because the middle schools throughout the district, they want them to have at least 500 kids in them so that they can offer sort of a more robust, what a terrible word, robust, but whatever, like a richer experience, right? More electives, and that's hard to do the fewer kids that you have. So I think it's decently likely that we will see proposals to move some of those kids in grades 6, 8 into middle schools. And then what happens to the K-8 schools? It's possible they could close or they could merge with each other. I think it's possible that some people, certainly on the school board, have a serious interest in looking at what's called focus option schools or magnet schools. Those are schools that draw kids from around the city. The rub there is that they're extraordinarily popular. So, at a time when you've got declining enrollment, can you afford to lose programs that people really want to come to, that they'll go out of their way to get their kids to, because typically there's no transportation offered? I don't know. That's a complicated one. Those schools do, for want of a better word, bogart kids from local neighborhood schools. So they siphon them off is another way of saying it.
Yeah.
So that's attention. And then the third touch point that I would say, and this is where our analysis really came in, is we looked carefully at neighborhood schools based on geography, the condition of their building, and how big they are, like whether it is even possible for neighborhood schools to take in more kids. And in today's Oregonian, you can find that list where we looked at some clusters of neighborhood schools that could potentially fit those criteria and be candidates for closure. An important caveat, well, like, for example, I'll pick out my kids' own old elementary school. They went to Abernathy in Southeast Portland. It's not very far away from Buckman, which is an arts magnet. Both schools are, under enrolled, and they're less than a mile away from each other, roughly. I can see a world in which those two schools are on the list for one of them
consolidation
closing
or whatever.
Right, yeah. One of them taking the other. I don't know if that's what the district will pick, but that was an example. You could also look, there's a cluster of about 6 elementary schools in Southwest Portland, Capitol Hill, Reiki, Maplewood, Hayhurst, Markham. And, I can see a world in which there's some closures and consolidations there. You could look over in North Portland, you could look at Chief Joseph Elementary and Peninsula Elementary and maybe consider those two schools, which are pretty close together and also both quite small. An important caveat here is that they're going to also need to weigh and consider the conditions of each building because you are not, if you've got a brand new building like, say, Rosa Parks in North Portland, there is no way the district's closing that building, right?
Yeah,
it is one of the smallest elementary schools, but it is brand new. It's got air conditioning. So that's a safe bet that other kids would be sent to that school and that building wouldn't be closed.
Yeah, well, I am just curious, the mystery part of it of what's going to get closed, what's not going to get closed is so interesting to me. And I'm curious, Julie, if the district has just said, here's our formula for how we figure out what's getting closed. 40% of it is condition of the building and whether there's AC. 30% is, under enrollment. It just seems like, why wouldn't they just take a very formulaic, if 50% of it, the decision making is going to be formulaic, what's the other 50%?
That's a great question. I think there certainly are intangibles, right? They are acutely conscious of not taking all the toll on communities that are maybe less likely to show up and yell and protest. And that's an intangible, right? They're really conscious of, hey, that we just messed around with a bunch of schools in outer Southeast Portland not very long ago. And are we going to go back in on those communities? These things need to be taken into account. I would say that when I asked about that very question, one of their answers was it's not about not touching any of the schools that might fall into those categories. It's about being certain that we're going to give them support after this transition is made and not sort of do it be like, oh, for a year or two, we'll give you an extra teacher and then pull back. Consolidations take time and effort and care to pull them off. What's the reader question? Do we have time for it?
Well, yeah. And this is if you're even able to answer this, because I know you can't answer certain questions, but which schools you would recommend that the district close?
Wow.
I know.
Oh my God, I'm so terrified to answer that one.
You don't have to.
You really
don't have to do it, Julia.
A reporter coming in for you.
Don't do it,
Julia. No.
I mean, look, I think maybe I'm being gullible and naive, but I tend to believe the district when they say that this isn't necessarily about saving money. It's about creating a better experience for all kids. I believe that. I was over at Ainsworth yesterday, which is the largest elementary school in the district, and those guys have a full-time PE teacher. They have a full-time music teacher. So the school can afford it because they have enough kids. It's not because the kids who go there are from wealthier families. It's just there's enough of a population that the economies of scale work. I would like to see that for every kid in the district, right? I think it would be great if you didn't have to freak out every year that your kid was going to lose an art teacher. Or that I think it would be great for everybody to have 2 classrooms at every grade level. So I would like to see Portland get to that. And P.S., all the people who are like, this is an outrage, close no schools. here's the thing. It's not communist China, right? PPS can't get people to have more babies. They can't force them to send them to Portland. And they're not in charge of how much it costs to buy a house in this city. So, at a certain point, we could kick the can down the road even further, but, we're going to get here eventually.
Yeah.
I mean, schools are the emotional heart of people's neighborhoods, right?
Exactly.
I always say that Ben and Ellie, my children's elementary school, was like church in a way, because we're not, we don't have a faith community, but, we belonged at that school. We were involved at that school. So people have really emotional connections to their kids' school communities.
Right. Well, thank you for bringing this conversation. I know that a lot of our listeners are parents, and it's good we're going to basically, what I'm saying, Julie, is we're going to tap you again because we'll probably have more questions.
I look forward to it. It's going to be a really volatile and complicated conversation. I hope people can take a beat, take a breath, resist the urge to scream their heads off, and just listen and really think about what's best for kids. It's not about the comfort of the adults. It's about what's best for children.
Mm-hmm. Hear, hear. Well, before we head out, we have some shout outs from members of our Portland Neighbors program. That's one of the perks of being a paid member of CityCast Portland. You have this opportunity to shout out a local business or organization that you love. Sophie, do you want to kick us off?
Sure. I have one here from listener Ryan J. that says, Ronan's Cut Parlor in St. John's, the sweetest, best value kids haircut in the city. We found the spot 2 years ago, and now my 4-year-old loves it. Ronan is so kind with the kiddos, has an awesome race car haircutting seat, and the price point is really good compared to other local places for kids' haircuts. Other than at home, but sometimes you need help fixing a botched home cut.
The race car chair is key.
Are adults allowed to go there?
I know, that sounds cool. It's funny because I don't know if you guys know this, but I live in St. John's. Literally wearing a shirt right now that says St. John's. But I don't think I've ever heard of this place. So I'm going to go look this place up. Okay, I have one here, another one from Sarah D that says, Wild Solitude Guiding's Tarot of Oregon Places. Hey, we know that lady. Beautiful photographic deck for people who love tarot and also people like me who love Oregon but know nothing about tarot. So thank you, Sarah D, for that shout out. Wild Solitude Guiding is actually Norther Emily, who is frequently on the show, and she comes on and talks about outdoor stuff. So that's really cool to see a listener shout out of some of the stuff she's doing. So a shout out to Ryan and Sarah for their shout outs, and a special thank you to Linda F and Rachel A for becoming CityCast Portland neighbors this week. When you join as a Portland neighbor, we'd also be happy to read your shout outs of places that you love in Portland, alongside a bunch of other perks like ad-free listening and invites to member-only events. Also, I think we're opening up a merch store for CityCast Portland neighbors, which is pretty cool. You can join at membership.citycast.fm/Portland. That's membership.citycast.fm. Awesome. Well, thanks again, you guys. Julia, Sophie, always a pleasure to host you both.
Thank you, Claudia.
Thanks for having us.
That's all for today here on CityCast Portland. Thank you for listening. Our production team this week was John Atariani, Julia Fiaioni, Rachel Monahan, Jesse Wiza, Kyle Neal, and myself. Original music by Jenny Conley and Steven Drizos, and additional music by All the Kimonos. Our ad music is by Sven Lindvall and Sarah the Instrumentalist from Epidemic Sounds via Getty Images. We'll be back Monday morning with more from around the city. Until then, see you at Slim's or at this Lake Oswego Airbnb.
Or at the St. John's haircut place.
Oh, it's true. We're all going to be on those little race car seats.
I love it.